Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and we're going to be talking about Seth Rich in this episode because, lo and behold, the FBI has asked a court for 66 years to release Seth Rich laptop information. Weird! I thought anything to do with Seth Rich was a right-wing, ludicrous conspiracy theory. After all, Russia. And if you didn't know about that and you weren't convinced by that argument, let me give you another. Russia. WikiLeaks, Russia. WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, Assange, Russia. This is where Russian hysteria ramped up to a new level. You see, Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, that wasn't a thing anymore. That didn't bat an eye. ISIS was getting old, and things were about to get global. And now, thought crimes were about to get big, and we wanted to fortify elections. So Russia. When they first gave you this narrative that Russians interfered with the election, they acted as though they hacked the machines on election night directly, right? But then later, the hacking was to do with what? The DNC emails, although there was no evidence that that occurred at all. Instead, some might argue that the trail led back to the owner of this laptop. Some might say that. All right. And when the Mueller report came out, I want to play this video in a moment. All right. What did they say? Oh, debunked. The Mueller report says all these conspiracy theories about Seth Rich were personified by Assange himself and the network to try to lead people into the era of fake news. Right? And not allow for the true Russian narrative that they could never prove, ever. And they had to classify a ton of things, including this, which they straight up lied about. Peter Strzok asked what the FBI had on Seth Rich in particular, and they admitted they had documents after they had already denied they had documents. All right, so I got a few clips here, but the most important ones we're going to get to Seymour Hersh, a really hard-nosed, important journalist out there. I listened to the entire Butowski collection. This 6-minute summation is actually a pretty good one, although it's kind of out of order at times. But it's also going to get into Andrew McCabe, which is extremely important. All right. But these narratives and how they're created and manipulated. So fake news, when we're living in a post-truth world, to dare to question the DNC email hack.
Conspiracy theories that follow the murder of Democratic National Committee staffer Seth Rich. Well, it turns out they were part of a disinformation campaign. The Mueller report says the conspiracy was all a lie.
Now, if you look here, it's going to be interesting because the story is he was shot outside, even though apparently the conversation that he was having with his girlfriend, as his parents said, he said he was home. All right, there's a lot of questions in this murder.
Orchestrated by WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to cover up his links to the Russian intelligence probe. It's a D.C. murder case, and the fake news and conspiracy theories did a lot of damage to so many people around here. Tonight, some of those people told our Scott Broom the Mueller report ends it all once and for all.
The fake news, to dare to question what happened to this guy when we're talking about Russian hacks. This information, those emails, they don't look like they were hacked at all. They look like they were downloaded onto a USB. In other words, there was no remote hacking of anything, of jack squaddles.
Seth Rich, a Democratic National Committee staffer, was shot in the back July 10, 2016 at Flagler Place Northwest, a short distance from his apartment.
So again, here they're saying, and the official version is, that he was outside.
Back with the Fox News alert, a brand new bombshell in the murder of that guy right there.
The case became a sensation. as Trump political operatives like Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone promoted a completely fake conspiracy theory that Rich was the source of the Democratic National Committee leaks that sunk the Clinton presidential campaign, and he'd been murdered to shut him up. It was all fake news.
Everything is fake news. Roger Stone's a terrible person. And I'm not here to promote Roger Stone. But surely there's nothing to hide. You know, the FBI that's been so honest throughout its career, and again, this isn't a recent phenomenon. Robert Mueller, who covered up so much during 9/11, we may never know the lengths at which he covered up internal crimes from his organization and other intelligence organizations out there. We might never, ever know. All right? I told Mueller, you know, and again, the QAnon sense people there were, it's happening. Mueller's really working for the good guys. He was a Republican, as if red and blue matters. But again, the other narratives they want to feed you is Mueller report, that's the God's word. And all of the Seth Rich stuff was fake news. Oh, it's fake.
Fox was forced to retract one of its stories.
We're not going to stop till I find my son's murderer.
Rich's family were tortured by the lies, and they were harassed online. Robert Mueller's report says it was all a disinformation campaign promoted by WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
Putin's puppet, Julian Assange, the poot-poot.
To cover up the real source of the stolen emails, Russian intelligence. Assange's lies, including a tweet offering a reward in the Rich murder, were designed to obscure the source of the materials that WikiLeaks was releasing, the Mueller report said.
This gives the family of Seth Rich the final solace that they need to put this thing to rest.
Brad Bauman is a former spokesman for Rich's family, who still live in Nebraska.
The human cost, the human toll of this lie stretches from a family that was deprived the ability to grieve their son that was murdered senselessly in the streets of Washington, D.C. It resulted in me receiving death threats. All for what? To protect Russian intelligence?
So this guy's running with the Russian intelligence narrative. And look, I feel awful for these people. I can't imagine. I can't imagine having to live through your child's death. Period. Okay? But in contrast to this, I want to show you right now what the family had to say in the immediate aftermath. See, we do that sort of stuff. We want to know what actually happened. You know, there's a point in this conversation where not only is Seth Rich alive by the accounts, talking to officers, right, and at home at one point when he's attacked or shot or whatever happened, okay, but he's alive at the hospital as well. All right, I'm just pointing this out, and that is from the parents' mouths themselves.
From what we gather, from what we've heard from the detectives, and what we learned from Kelsey, he was talking to her. She heard some noise on the phone. She said, "Are you okay? Are you home?" He says, "Yeah, I'm home." And then it's, "I have to call you back." And we don't know what happened there, except he ended up shot twice in the back, and they said he was talking to the officers when they first got there. He was maybe stable when he got to the hospital, and then things went bad, and bullets and people don't match well.
He had bruising on his face, he had bruising on his knuckles, and he had bruising on his knees. So we know he struggled, but we believe someone came from behind him. Was he pushed down? What the struggle was? There's no surveillance yet that we have heard of or anything. We know the police are looking for that, but we may never know what actually happened.
If it was a robbery, it wasn't successful because the police have all his belongings, cell phone, wallet, credit cards, money, so
Nothing was taken.
Nothing was taken from him. So if that's what they were trying to do, they got scared and they ran off. And he was a caring person, that he wanted to make a difference. And unfortunately, those visions, those ideas are going to have to be unfulfilled.
So let me just pause it there. Aaron Rich has also been named in a lot of these court documents, okay? I want people to understand that, all right? And in this, in this battle throughout court with Butowski, and we're going to show you Rod Wheeler and Seymour Hersh, Andrew McCabe, all right, is named as Seymour Hersh's source. Pretty wild stuff. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, we've known for a long time, it's not a shock that the FBI was going to say, hey, we want to classify all this stuff. 66 years. You don't get to find out. 66 years, right? There's these documents which were heavily redacted. This is after they said they didn't have anything on the guy. Remember, it's all Russian disinformation. It's a Russian disinfo campaign. This is Craig Murray's website. Really good read right here. But you have specifically here during this, we're going to debunk Rod Wheeler's claims.com. Okay, we're debunking Rod Wheeler's claims. And I'm going to put what Rod Wheeler said on Hannity. I'm not endorsing any of it, etc. Okay, I'm just saying we have to ask these questions. Really, what I want to do is put what Hersh put out there, because I think that's really important. Because apparently, Mr. Hersh said he obtained his information about Seth Rich from Mr. McCabe. Now, does that mean McCabe put out a totally false story to Hersh about taking Seth Rich out because he was the leaker? If you think about it, that's a possibility, right? Andrew McCabe was one of those adamant anti-Trump guys. Or is this just a game of deep throat? So, first things first, I want to play this Seymour Hersh audio right down here. We're going to go back to the beginning.
About the kid, and I'll tell you what I know. What I know comes off an FBI report. Don't ask me how you can figure out. I've been around long enough. The kid I don't think he was murdered. I don't think he was murdered because of what he knew. The kid's a nice boy, 27. He was not an IT expert, but he learned stuff. He was a data programmer, but he learned stuff. And so he's living on one street somewhere. He's living in a very rough neighborhood. And in the exact area where he'd been, there've been about 10, I'm sure you know all this, there've been about 8 or 9 or 10 violent robberies, most of them with somebody brandishing a gun. And it's the kid's hands, I'm telling you, I'm sure you know it, his hands were marked up. The cops concluded he fought off the people, tried to run, and he shot him twice in the back with a .22, small caliber. And then the kids that did it ran. They got scared, didn't take his role. Okay, so what the cops do then, and here's what nobody knows, what I'm telling you. Now, maybe you know something about it.
So here we're going to get into it. So apparently this wasn't a hit, wasn't a murder. But then again, you have all those anomalies before. Was he really inside? That doesn't make any sense. Was he alive when he got to the hospital? Maybe. Also weird, right? But now they're going to go into this computer, all right, that they want 66 years of classification on, whether or not it's a hit.
When you have a death like that, DC cops, if you're dead, you generally don't just go. You have to find out what's going on. You have to get to the kid's apartment and see what you can find. If he's dead, you don't need a warrant, but most cops get a warrant because they don't know if the guy has a roommate. You need a warrant, so they get a warrant. I'm just telling you, there is such a thing. They go in the house and they can't do much with his computer, its password. The cops don't know much about it. So the DC cops, they have a cyber unit in DC, and they're more sophisticated. They come and look at it. The idea is maybe he's had a series of exchanges with somebody who says, I'm going to kill you, motherfucker, over a girl, and they can't get in. The cyber guys do a little better, but they can't make sense of it. So they call the FBI cyber unit. The DC unit, the Washington field office, is a hot shit unit. The guy running the Washington field office, he's like a 3-star at an army base. He's already looking for 4. You know what I mean? He's going to go with a top job. There's a cyber unit there that's excellent. What you get in a warrant, the public information you get in a warrant doesn't include, it does not include the affidavit underlying why you're going in, what the reasons are. That's almost never available on. I can tell you that. The existence of a warrant is a public document 99% of the time. So on the same morning, they call in the Fed. The Feds get through, and here's what they find. This is according to the FBI report. What they find is he makes first of all, you have to know some basic facts. One of the basic facts is there's no DNC or Podesta email that exists beyond May 22nd, May 21st, 22nd. It's the last email for either one of those groups.
So he's going to make the point. I mean, look at the timing of this thing. Look at this, huh? You're going to tell me that Seth Rich isn't the guy that gave WikiLeaks all this stuff? No, it's fake news. It said so in the Mueller report.
And so what the report says that sometime in late spring, we're talking about June, summer's in June 21st. Late spring would be after, I presume, I don't know. I just say it says late spring, early summer. He makes contact with WikiLeaks. That's in his computer, and he makes contact. Now, I have to be careful because I met Julianne 10, 12 years. I stay the fuck away from people like that. And he's invited me, and when I'm in London, I always get a message, come see me as the Ecuadorian ambassador, and there's no fucking way I'm going there. I've got enough trouble without getting photographed by every fucking age. He's under total surveillance by everybody. But anyway,
notice that, too. He's under total surveillance by everybody. Hersh knew he's under total surveillance by everybody. And all that's come out at the Ecuadorian embassy, obviously beyond, and now being falsely prosecuted and probably going to be extradited to this country in the end of any bastion of journalism and free speech. I mean, that's really happening. This is connected to that. Another reason that it's important to continue to point out, hey, they don't want you to have the info for 66 years. Hey, longer than they said for the Kennedy stuff. Hey.
He found what he had done. He had submitted a series of documents, of emails, some juicy emails from the DNC. And, by the way, all this shit about the DNC, whether hacked or wasn't hacked, but whatever happened, the Democrats themselves wrote this shit. You know what I mean? All I know is that he offered a sample, an extensive sample, I'm sure dozens of emails, and said, I want money. That later, WikiLeaks did get the password. He had a Dropbox, a protected Dropbox, which isn't hard to do. I mean, you don't have to be a wizard, IT wizard. He was certainly, he's not a dumb kid. They got access to the Dropbox. He also, and this is also in the FBI report, he also let people know with whom he was dealing. And I don't know how he dealt. I'll tell you about WikiLeaks in a second. I don't know how he dealt.
Let's just stop it here. Now think about this. The FBI reports we just showed you were heavily censored. That's probably a small portion of what they have on paper. If these lawyers are successful, and again, the FBI is trying to get 66 years, in getting this documentation, and Hersh is proven right, I mean, are we going to stop calling it fake news? Huh? When do we get to do that in the post-truth world? I don't know that we do.
With the WikiLeaks and the mechanism. But he also, the word was passed according to the FBI report. I also shared this box with a couple of friends. So if anything happens to me, it's not going to solve your problem. Okay? I don't know what that means. I don't know whether he was, anyway. But WikiLeaks got access, and before he was killed, I can tell you right now, Brennan's an asshole. I've known all these people for years. Clapper's sort of a better guy, but now rocket scientist. The NSA guy is a fucking moron. And they, the trouble with all those guys is that the only way they're going to make it to a board or two and get, hired by SAIC to deliver some fat cat contracts is if Hillary stayed in. With Trump, they're gone. They're done. They're going to live on their pension. They're not going to make it. And I got to tell you, guys in that job, they don't want to live on their pension. They want to be on boards like they're make $600,000 for going to 4 visits. I have somebody on the inside. I've been around a long time and I read a lot of stuff. I have somebody on the inside who will go and read a file for me. This person is unbelievably accurate and careful. He's a very high-level guy. He'll do a favor. You're just going to have to trust me. I have what they call it in my business, long-form journalism. I have a narrative of how that whole fucking thing began.
And by the way, think about that. He's talking about McCabe, the assistant deputy director of the FBI.
It's a Brennan operation. It was an American disinformation, and the fucking president. At one point, when they even started telling the press, they were back briefing the press. The head of the NSA was going and telling the press, this fucking cocksucker Rogers was telling the press that we even know who in the GRU, the Russian military intelligence service, leaked it. I mean, all bullshit. They were telling these. I worked at the New York Times for fucking years, and the trouble with the fucking New York Times is they have smart guys, but they're totally beholden on sources. If the president or the head of the CIA tells them something, they actually believe it. I was hired at the Times to go after the war, in the Vietnam War in '72, because they were just locked in. So that's what the Times is. These guys run the fucking Times. And Trump's not wrong. I mean, I wish he would calm down and had a better press secretary. You have to be so. Trump's not wrong to think they all fucking lied about him.
No, he wasn't wrong to think they all lied about him, because they did. And so the final video that we're going to show you here, this is the Rod Wheeler DNC staff murder. You can still find this on the Fox News page 5+ years ago. And again, I'm not saying that Wheeler's going to get it all correct. I'm going to say that obviously there's some questions to be asked.
Welcome back to Hannity. So more on the story of murdered Democratic National Committee staffer Seth Rich, who was gunned down last July in Washington, D.C. D.C. police are officially in charge of this case, but former D.C. homicide detective Rod Wheeler, who was hired by a third party to investigate the murder on behalf of the family, says Mr. Rich was communicating with WikiLeaks before he was killed. Now, Seth's family has been pushing back today, releasing a statement that reads in part, quote, "We are a family who's committed to facts, not fake evidence that surfaces every few months to fill the void and distract law enforcement and the general public from finding." Now, Seth's murderers. Now, the services of the private investigator who spoke to the press was ordered to the Rich family and paid for by a third party, and contractually was barred from speaking to the press or anyone outside of law enforcement or the family unless explicitly authorized by the family. Fox News has retained a copy of the contract signed by the Rich family, retaining the services of Rod. He joins us now with the very latest. All right, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the technicality of who hired you. I've known you a long time, Rod. You're a man of honor and integrity. Right. So tell us who hired you.
Well, actually, I was hired by the family, Joel and Mary Rich. They signed the contract. Now, the financial benefit, if there were any financial benefit, and by the way, there wasn't much, that was actually paid for by a third party that I have had very little communication with at all, Sean.
And he's talking about Butowski.
Yeah, all right, let's go through this case. The timeline is fascinating here. As I played in the last segment, Julian Assange, I asked him repeatedly on radio and television if Russia was involved. Absolutely not. Now, believe him or not, he's a guy that WikiLeaks has an 11-year history of never being proven wrong. And all these leaks, by the way, ended up being, a lot of them ended up being published in places like the New York Times. So I guess my question is, when you look at the timeline of this, and 12 days after he was killed, that shows up on WikiLeaks, what did you discover in terms of the contacts with WikiLeaks?
Right. Well, that's an excellent question, and let me clear that up right now, exactly what it was that I found. Now, I have never seen the emails myself directly. I haven't even seen the computer that Seth Rich used. Here's the problem with all of this. I don't even know where the computer is. I checked with the police department. They said they don't know where the computer is, and the FBI. They say they don't have the computer.
So, so again, this is just like, it's the same thing with the Wiener laptop. Oh, we don't even have it. The Hunter laptop, we don't even have it. And then they have it, and it's real, and they're like, we want to classify this for 66 years. Oh.
Now, where did this information come from in terms of knowing or believing, I should say, that Seth Rich could have been in communications with WikiLeaks? There was a federal investigator that was involved on the inside of the case, a person that's very credible. And I'll tell you, let me just say this, Sean, I don't like to suggest things without saying the person's name, but I can't say the person's name because that person would be thrown under the bus, and I can't do that. But This person, we checked him out. We have to check him out. Very credible. He said he laid eyes on the computer and he laid eyes on the case file. And he came across very credible. When you look at that with the totality of everything else that I found in this case, it's very consistent for a person with my experience to begin to think, well, perhaps there were some email communications between Seth and WikiLeaks. Every time I talk with the police department, though, Sean, every time I talk to the police department about the WikiLeaks or the emails, it's automatically shut down. That discussion is automatically shut down.
And because it's Russia, Russia, Russia. Did I mention Russia? By the way, 250 people watching. Can we get 100 thumbs up? How about 150 thumbs up? Folks, we're going to wrap this one up. Why? Because I'm going to bed early these days. You know why I'm going to bed early? I'm doing that morning show 8 to 10 a.m. 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That means it's 7 o'clock my time. I'm getting about 5 o'clock to prep for that. Had a great one. You can start for $1. The links are down below for the first month, and it's $10 and then $100. If you lock it in, that's great. You get all the other great people over at Red Voice Media. Actually, my girlfriend, Alicia Powell, also has done some great work at the Gateway Pundit on Seth Rich. Actually interviewed Ty Clevenger, the person who's filed a lot of this Freedom of Information Act stuff and tried to get to the bottom of the Seth Rich case. We're over on Rumble. We're growing there, too. That's where you can find everything for free. Rockfin, if you want to support the broadcast. Also $9.99 a month or $100 for the year. And then you get all these other great creators. It's like a Netflix for creators, and it's really beneficial. You can lock that in today. That helps out. Everything is free. Now, here's how we're doing it. So if you're on Red Voice Media, you get the second hour, okay? And the second hour in all of its video glory. You still can get the audio for free at Podbean, all right? And you can call in to the show on Podbean while we are live. This is Monday through Thursday. Again, Red Voice Media. The links are down below. Again, give it a thumbs up on the way out. We didn't hit that 150. I would have liked to. Guys, obviously, this is not a left or right issue. This is about our national security apparatus. This is about the post-truth world. This is about fake news. This is about pioneers in journalism being prosecuted not for crimes, but for exposing mass crimes against humanity. WikiLeaks, Assange, so much more. That rode all the way through the Trump administration. Trump had a chance to do the right thing, and he failed. All right? He failed. He listened to that same swamp and establishment that he said he was trying to expose. Well, still being abused by them. That's how it works. So I love you guys, and I will see you all on the flip.